Good morning and welcome to Rising. We have another great show for you today. I know how much our viewers love us discussing the weather here in D.C. It is a foggy, misty day, but I enjoyed scooting here on my scooter
did?
for the first time
How
in
could you see?
weeks. Well, I don't need to see. I know these sidewalks and roads like the back of my hand.
I really worry about
every
you on the
crack and
scooter.
crevice.
It's crossed my mind a couple times.
Well, I've only fallen off like 5 times.
Yes, and you told me hit by car doors and yeah, it's a lot of things.
No, I'm glad to be doing it again. I finally got my scooter back because it had been stolen for the second time.
Did you put a tracker on it?
Yes. So if it gets stolen again,
Investigator Robby on the
there
scene.
will be hell to pay. I will track you down. I will.
Do you mind telling him in the comments that's not a smart idea? I've already done that.
I will punch you for sport.
Coming up on Rising, a House Oversight Committee panel has voted to subpoena Attorney General Pam Bondi to testify about her handling of the Epstein files.
Plus, Minnesota Governor Tim Walz testified Wednesday on Capitol Hill as part of a probe into his state's fraud scandal, and we're going to dig into that.
And HHS Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. says that Dunkin', Starbucks, and other companies need to prove that their ingredients are safe, but some were not happy about that. But first, Robby, I know you have a lot to say about that one, but what's on your radar?
I wasn't happy about that. Not happy about this either. Now, one of President Trump's favorite pastimes is bashing the media, and his White House keeps that tradition alive no matter the circumstances. See, for example, Karoline Leavitt tearing into CNN's Kaitlan after the host asked about Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth bashing the media for covering American deaths to the strikes in Iran. Here was that exchange.
That's what these. Hegseth was complaining that it was front page news about these 6 service members who were killed.
That's not what the secretary said, Kaitlan, and that's not what the secretary meant, and you know it. You know you are being disingenuous. There is not. We've never had a Secretary of Defense. Who cares more?
Get through or tragic things happen. It's front page news. I get it. The press only wants to make the president look bad. Yeah, as you know, we cover the deaths of U.S. service members under every president.
The press does only want to make the president look bad. That's a fact. Especially you. No, listen to me. Especially you and especially CNN. And the Secretary of Defense cares deeply about our war fighters and our men and women in uniform. He travels all across this country to meet with them, to connect with them, and your network has hardly ever probably reported on that. You also had the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, Chairman Kane, who's a brave patriot.
Now, I like to make fun of CNN as much as anybody else on the right, but here's the thing. Americans are dying as a result of Trump's decision to condone Israeli attacks that have killed Iranian leader Ayatollah Khamenei and decimated the leadership of the country. Iranians have fired missiles in response as their terrorist proxies are expected to carry out attacks, and we're not going to ignore our dead because it's inconvenient for the administration. To Colin's point, CNN has always covered American war deaths, and so have all other news networks. That's because it's important. Those deaths matter. They matter in their own right, and they should affect how we feel about this war effort, a war that was never voted on, nor even sold to the American people. We were simply informed it was happening after the fact. So yes, the media is going to ask the Secretary of War to justify American soldiers losing their lives, no matter how annoying that might be. The lives of our servicemen and women matter. Take, for instance, Declan Cody, a 20-year-old member of the Army Reserves who was killed in Kuwait on Sunday. Breaking Point's host Sagar Enjeti notes that Cody was a 20-year-old kid with his whole life ahead of him. He was born 4 or 5 years after 9/11 and died fighting in another war in the Middle East. He's not the first, and he won't be the last. Yes, sacrifices are made during war, and the brave men and women who put their lives on the line for our freedoms, they knew what they were signing up for. But we need to consider how many American lives we're willing to spend in pursuit of what goal precisely? Regime change? An end to Iran's nuclear ambitions? Israel's sense of security? What is it? The administration did not bother seeking our permission or Congress's permission to take these steps, so you better bet that the White House is going to have to field questions about it. You know, and I'm usually with them to bash mainstream media or whoever it is about unfair coverage, but that's such a cope in this case. It's not unfair. Americans are dying. American soldiers are dying who would not have come under attack except for this strike. That doesn't mean the strike is not worth doing. They signed up for this job, and we're going to lose lives in pursuit of reasonable strategic aims of the United States. But they're going to be asked about it, and they're going to be asked about it particularly because this was never justified to the American people. We were never sold on it. We were never walked through it. It was never voted on. So of course they're going to get questions, and their justifications are contradictory. So I was pretty irritated with her going into full CNN is out to get me kind of self-pitying nonsense.
That's the biggest thing. The answers are all over the place as to why we're actually in this war. And a big question is where it's going. So, not only did we talk about a little bit of the chaos of the people that are in the Middle East, whether it's for work or travel, that have a response after the fact when it's become chaos and they don't know how to get home. That's one instance. NATO is now involved completely because there was that ballistic missile that was headed towards Turkey. So now you got other countries involved. The whole Middle East is involved because they're trying to attack directly bases all over the Middle East that are hitting civilian targeted areas like Amazon and Dubai, the faculty. And so it's just a lot. The State Department is now telling people at all these bases to head back. And so we are just in a state of chaos across the world. It's really caused a decision, like you said, that we didn't vote on or wasn't sold to the American people is now affecting the entire world. And also, I read in the New York Times today that regime change, if that is the goal, because again, we don't know what we're fighting for and have one accord about what that is also not likely, because Ayatollah's son is actually who's being considered by the Iranian clerics to take the leadership role. So how does that change? How far is the son going to stray from what his dad wanted to do? And then we talked about the cost of American lives. Obviously, that is the biggest deal. And 20 years old was just tragic to hear somebody that young for something that wasn't explained to us. But there's also an actual cost to the idea that we are going to be in this embroiled conflict with Iran. Is the cost to the American people, which is not as important as American lives, but the gas prices have already gone up 20 cents from last week. So oil prices are already affected. And so when we look at the actual cost to American lives and then the actual real cost to the wallets of the Americans who wanted America first, a lot of people have questions, not just Kaitlan Collins. The whole country has questions about who does this benefit, what was this for, and what's the game plan and the strategy? Because there's chaos rippling throughout the country. And I think these are fair, nonpartisan questions that have to be answered with some kind of uniformity, because there's this actual fear of the state of the country right now. You can see different people, the way they're communicating and talking about this, because of the lack of leadership that's succinct. And I think that fear is warranted, because a war without a cause or understanding leaves everybody to feel a little more vulnerable than they did a week ago.
Yeah. I talked to my mother on the phone yesterday. Hadn't spoken to her in a while. She'd been on vacation, traveling. And first thing she asked me was like, do you guys feel safe in D.C.?
Right.
I'm like, what are you talking about? She meant because of, are we going to face retaliatory military action as the nation's capital? This kind of stuff, it's on people's minds. And again, we got into this without any explanation of where it goes. You say maybe the Ayatollah's son's going to take over. Maybe that's a good thing. I don't know. What do they know? Have they thought through this?
Well, then there's this whole other layer that Iran is actually trying to negotiate a deal. Again, this is according to the New York Times. They indirectly reached out to the CIA about it. And so I want to know exactly what that deal looks like, because again, you talk about how the president hated Obama's deal. So I'd like to see the exact elements in this deal that make it so drastically different, other than not compiling what's necessary to create a nuclear bomb, because that was in the deal that Obama had.
Well, what's different is Trump gets to put his name on this deal.
Right, but the big difference is that now we've lost 6 and counting Americans because Trump wanted to put his name on it.
Yeah.
And so that's the real tragedy. The House Oversight Committee continuing its probe into the convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. Why they subpoenaed Attorney General Pam Bondi. Coming up, we'll be right back.